Welcome back to my channel. This is Scary. Creepers in the Woods. For my wife and I's honeymoon, we went to Hawaii. We heard that Maui was the best island for couples and honeymoons. And we were staying in a hotel right on the beach. They'd have torch shows and bonfires and luau's and other kinds of live entertainment every single night. The first few days were amazing. We spent a lot of time drinking and hopping around restaurants. One afternoon, since we had rented a car, we decided to go explore some of the jungle hiking trails. As it turns out, there are a bunch on the island, and it was definitely on our bucket list for the trip. We drove a long time to the nearest parking lot to the Pie Trail, which we'd heard was the best one. Apparently, it was also popular because there were already a few cars in the parking lot. But I'd read online that the parking lot wasn't just for this one trail, but rather led to several different ones. The walk down the path was beautiful, but there were still a few other couples and families that we passed along the way. When we finally turned the corner and entered what we knew was the start of the Pee Pee Trail, it was finally just the two of us walking down this path that ran straight into a wall of bamboo on either side of us. The path was narrow, so the walls of bamboo stood tall, blocking out most of the sunlight and casting us in an eerie shadow. We heard that the trail would eventually lead to numerous waterfalls and hidden ponds that you could swim in. It was perfect. Just us, nature, and each other. After walking for a while, my wife stopped us and pointed at something directly ahead on the path. It was a small animal with brown fur and a white belly, and it was stopped, looking at us. It was the cutest little thing ever. Neither of us had ever seen anything like it. She started slowly inching towards it, and it ran up a tree. She chased after it, screaming, I'm sorry," and I followed suit. Now, on the other side of the tree, the trail continued on. So we just figured we'd try to get past it and keep going. That was when we saw another one. This time, it was taking off down the opposite side of the path, and it seemed almost deliberate, like it was showing us the way. My wife, being the goofball that she is, chased after it, following it further and further down the trail. All the while, as we got deeper into the jungle, we heard the sound of rushing water. And when we finally turned the corner, it was exactly what we were hoping for. A beautiful pond with crystal clear water, surrounded by huge boulders and rocks, lay before us. And the sound of the water was coming from the small waterfall, pouring over a rock formation into the pond. It was amazing. My wife immediately said, "We can swim in that, right?" And I nodded, already taking off my clothes. I've always loved swimming in natural bodies of water, and this was unlike any place I'd been before. I hadn't brought a bathing suit, but it was such an incredible spot that I just decided to take the plunge anyway. The water was a wonderfully comfortable temperature, and there was enough space beneath the surface to fully submerge myself. And although there was no one else around, it was big enough that I didn't feel completely exposed. It was so relaxing, and I don't think I've ever been able to describe the feeling of being surrounded by nothing but nature. When my wife joined me, she said the exact same thing. We spent a couple of hours just hanging out and enjoying it, laughing and kissing. It was then that my wife started joking about us being alone here, and we both started to laugh. That's when she said, "You know, we could skinny dip." I laughed at her and said, "Yeah, no one could see us." Then I realized she was serious. I paused for a second, and I said, "But people could hear us." She looked over at me, smiled, then ran out of the pond, threw her head back, and jumped into the air. And I remember thinking, well, here goes nothing. And I stepped out of the water. What I didn't see was the older man with a straw hat and a long gray beard standing in the jungle, half behind a tree, staring at us. I don't know if it was the fact that I was completely naked or what, but the look on his face will forever be etched into my mind. It was pure shock, like he'd just witnessed something he wasn't expecting. That expression was frozen onto his face for what seemed like an eternity, before he finally blinked. My wife and I both froze in that moment, frozen in our tracks as we stared at one another. It was my wife who broke the silence first. In a panicked whisper, she said, "Oh my God," as she pointed at him. I instantly panicked. I responded, "I don't see anyone." She turned back to me, pointing again. There, above his head. And as I finally looked back at the man, that was when I saw it. He was indeed wearing a straw hat, and it was pulled low, covering his face. That's when she said, "He's staring at us." It was all that I could do not to burst out laughing. I'm too nice of a person, so I waved to him for some dumb reason. He didn't wave back. He didn't smile. He didn't even move. I looked at my wife and said, "We should leave." But she didn't want to step out of the water, naked for him to see. I kind of agreed, so now I called out to him, asking if he needed something. And only then he called back in a surprisingly deep voice, saying he's looking for his dog. I said we haven't seen it, and then he walked away. I said to my wife, "We need to go immediately." We got out of the water and got dressed, and tried to find the trail, but we couldn't find it. We'd strayed far enough away from it that we were apparently lost. We had lost the direction we came from, and there was no cell reception out here. It was getting late in the day, and panic was setting in. By the time the sun was setting, my wife was in tears. All the while, as it got darker and darker, we felt as though we were being followed, hearing footsteps every now and then. It reached the point where the jungle was completely dark now, and we had to use our flashlights on our dying phones. But when we heard footsteps coming from behind us again, I whispered to my wife to turn it off to not reveal ourselves. We felt like we were being followed for hours. After turning out the lights, it was pitch black for a second, so my eyes started adjusting to the darkness. As soon as that happened, I noticed the figure about 10 feet away, and it was slowly creeping closer. I backed away slowly as I pushed my wife behind me. I said, "What do you want?" in a very nervous voice. My wife apparently didn't see him because she turned her phone's flashlight back on and aimed it at the figure, revealing it to be that old man with a straw hat and beard holding a hacksaw. We both screamed. My wife let out a scream of fear while I screamed, "Go, go, go." To her, we ran through the jungle without any lights. There was just enough light to barely see where we were going. We ran and ran and ran. Thankfully, I'd worn sneakers, but my wife had sandals on. Luckily, she didn't seem to care at all about whether she scuffed them. Eventually, I got cell reception, so we followed the map back to the parking lot we came from, which took a good 10 to 15 minutes of running. We made it back to the car, and at that point, it felt like we were given a new chance at life. The next day, we went straight to the Maui Police Department and reported the whole incident. I guess we were hoping that maybe we could save some other poor tourist couple from having to experience what we did. After that, we tried the best we could to continue our honeymoon, but it definitely put a damper on things. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button below. I greatly appreciate when you do, and I thank you for watching. That terrifying encounter was definitely a highlight of our honeymoon, but it was still a beautiful trip overall. My wife and I were lucky enough to travel around Europe for a few weeks, and we stayed in 3 different places, with our last being Messina, Sicily. Our first 2 hotels were in Palermo and Cefalu, and while in Messina, we did most of our sightseeing at sites like Taormina. Messina was packed with beautiful old architecture and museums to explore, which is what my wife, Patricia, and I enjoy the most. Now, we don't really speak any Italian beyond maybe an elementary level. We tried learning before the trip, but it can be difficult when your language learning app is in English. But I digress. Messina is a port-heavy city and has a lot of English-speaking tourists, but also a lot of Italian-speaking locals. So many locals would approach us trying to sell us things. I'll admit, It was a little overwhelming at times, but we managed. At night, the vibe where we were was fun, lots of music, people drinking and dancing and whatnot. And Patricia and I were partaking a little bit while also continuing to walk around and explore. The night got the better of us, and we ended up getting pretty drunk. Pretty soon it was past midnight, and things outside on the streets were simmering down. We took a wrong turn back to our hotel and kind of lost our way. We asked a couple of locals for directions, but they weren't much help. Eventually, we ended up in this sketchy alleyway, and Patricia was getting upset that we seemed to be entering a sketchy area. I put my arm around her to make her feel safer. Suddenly, some guy came up to us, obnoxiously close, speaking Italian like a machine gun. So quick, we couldn't even attempt to understand any words. At that moment, I didn't know what that word meant. I pushed the guy out of our faces and walked away quickly with Patricia. He yelled more stuff at us in Italian. I didn't understand a single word of it. As we got away from him, I Googled what the word fantasma meant, because it was the only word that he kept repeating that stood out. It means ghost, and when we found that out, we looked at each other. I couldn't help but nervously laugh to try to get Patricia to laugh as well, simply because it sounded ridiculous. We were in this dark, sketchy area of the city for sure. There didn't seem to be anyone else around. We'd normally call an Uber, but it's not even a thing in Sicily. So we had to walk it. I have to admit, I was probably as uncomfortable as Patricia, as we'd heard certain parts of the city were unsafe at night. Then out of nowhere, there was this quiet woman's crying sound coming from behind us. We both heard it, and we both looked back. There was this young but freakishly tall woman about 10 yards away from us, walking slowly in our direction. Her face was buried in her hands. Her height was actually unnaturally tall. She looked taller than me, in fact. It felt like we were in this channel of alleyways and narrow one-way streets, and every time we turned, we'd still hear the crying behind us. It only stopped when we made it back to, I guess, what you call one of the main roads with other civilian traffic besides us. From there, we walked back to the hotel. Patricia kept insisting what we saw was a ghost, and every time she said it, it gave me chills. The next morning after, of course, sleeping in, we decided to go to the waterfront to walk off the previous night as hangover and to look around a little bit before heading home. Of course, Patricia brought up the ghost we saw the night before, and I'll never forget the look on her face. We were walking hand in hand, and she pointed to a very nice-looking restaurant near the water with outdoor seating. When she pointed to it, she said, "Fantasma." I laughed and told her there was no way we were eating there. That's when she pointed out the sign above the door. It read, "Ristorante Fantasma." Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe we really did see a ghost the night before. Who am I to say? All I can say is that if you ever visit Messina, be careful. You never know when a ghost might appear in front of you. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. We aren't the richest couple out there. We both work 9-to-5 jobs to make ends meet. We're doing all right now, but back when we got married, we were struggling. So when it came time for our honeymoon, we couldn't go all out and blast all our money. My wife, who I'll choose to keep nameless, was doing research for affordable beach getaways, and she found a private house in the Bahamas for 3 nights on Airbnb, so we went with that. After flight tickets and the cost for the rental, it didn't even come out to that much. Upon arrival, we entered the code for the padlock on the door to let ourselves into the home. It had a spacious living room and kitchen, a large bedroom, 1 bathroom, and a big back deck that led to the private beach. We spent all the first day on the beach, then walked to a nearby restaurant for dinner. When we got back, this is where the weird things started happening. As soon as we walked in the door, we noticed things seemed like they were in the wrong places, like our sandals, our bags, and so on. Nothing was missing though, so we accused each other of having moved the stuff beforehand. We jumped in the hot tub, that was on the back deck for a while, until we both heard something from inside the house, like a bang or a door closing. I got out from the hot tub to check, dripping all over the floor of the house. All the doors were closed though. I didn't remember if they were open earlier or not. Regardless, I checked the room, and it was clear of any intruders, as well as the bathroom. I went back outside to grab a towel and put my clothes on. I was done in the hot tub anyway, and so was my wife, though I was growing a little suspicious or cautious, you might say. The second day, we sat on the beach for a while again, then went to some of the touristy areas of the Bahamas and did dinner. When we got back, again, we felt like things were different. Our stuff seemed to be in the same spots, but the bathroom and bedroom doors were open, and we didn't remember keeping them open. We knew it was possible we were being paranoid now, and didn't actually remember how the doors were left, but still, it was getting uncomfortable now. We made sure all the windows and doors were locked, and we skipped the hot tub that night. We just watched movies on the TV in the living room, as there was a bunch of included streaming services on there. There was no upstairs to the house, yet we thought we could hear little taps and whatnot above our heads. Maybe the roof, maybe an iguana, or some similar creature. At this point, we were even starting to think there might be some kind of bohemian creepy crawly in the house. It seemed like a more logical explanation as to there being an intruder in this relatively small space. That night, I was in bed before my wife. She was in the shower when I heard her scream. I basically exploded out of bed to run into the bathroom. She turned the water off by that and told me that there was something in the vent above the shower. I got on the ledge of the tub and looked in it, but it was too dark in there. However, I did hear some tiny noises coming from in there. This almost confirmed that there was a rodent or some small creature in the vents of the house. Still, we had one more day. It wasn't our problem. We went to bed together. The next thing I remember was waking up to my wife shaking me. She had this horrified look on her face that immediately sent shivers down my spine. She told me to listen, and the silence of the room allowed me to hear it. This frantic whispering sound coming from the ceiling, particularly one of the ceiling vents. That was it. I grabbed my phone to call the owner of the Airbnb. I heard the ringing, but simultaneously, I heard this vibrating sound from above us. Immediately, I started to think, wait, is there an upstairs that the owner is living in? The vibrating above us stopped almost as quickly as it started, but the call was still ringing on my end. Curiously, I took my phone's flashlight and aimed it up through the vents, and for just a split second, I saw someone looking down through the vent into the room. Immediately, I don't know if this was because of my state of mind, but it felt like 20 minutes of me just sitting there aiming the light up the vent, and then suddenly stopping. And the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and my skin got cold. I don't know how else to explain it. My wife was awake at this point, and I was silently pleading with her to not make a sound. I knew exactly what I saw, but I didn't want to scare her. I asked her if she saw it too, but of course she said no. I ended the call with the host without saying anything, threw my phone on the bed, and we packed all of our important stuff as quickly as we could. It took all of about 30 seconds, and we were out the front door. I don't even remember taking my bag and grabbing my wife's hand. We ran through the sandy dirt road until we came to a street, and we stopped to catch our breaths. We stayed in a cheap hotel that night, and the next night as well. The last day, we spent most of it waiting at the airport, but we reported this incident to Airbnb, and we got all of our money back, and I'm pretty sure Airbnb banned the owner of that house's account. We didn't pursue anything further with legal action, as we were just happy to get our money back. Nothing of ours was missing, but who the hell knows what kind of shady he was doing there when we weren't in the house. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing this story. If you did, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I've been your host, and I'll see you next time for another scary story. Bye, guys.